Level of concern right now about the potential rise of anti-Semitism in light of everything that's going on in Israel?
So a couple of things. We have not seen any credible threats. I know there's been always questions about credible threats, and so just want to make sure that that's out there. But look, Muslim and those perceived to be Muslim have endured a disproportionate number of hate-fueled attacks.
We are witnessing a very peculiar thing taking place in our world right now, and it appears that for some reason the response to a terror attack on the state of Israel for the crime of being Jewish in the Middle East is being met with anti-Semitism at home and abroad. Here in the United States of America, we have seen rally after rally after rally where people come out and say, you know what we need is for the Palestinians to get their own state, which is, of course, exactly what the terrorists want. So terrorism works, is the message we're sending, and anti-Semitism is not only okay, but it's encouraged. And when it's called out, for some reason, this administration has a real hard time seeing who the bad guys are. It's very strange. Listen to this exchange at the press briefing today between Karine-Jean Pierre and a reporter with a reasonable question.
Level of concern right now about the potential rise of anti-Semitism in light of everything that's going on in Israel?
So a couple of things. We have not seen any credible threats. I know there's been always questions about credible threats, and so just want to make sure that that's out there. But look, Muslim and those perceived to be Muslim have endured a disproportionate number of hate-fueled attacks. And certainly President Biden understands that many of our Muslim, Arab Americans and Palestinian American loved ones and neighbors are worried about the hate being directed at their communities. And that is something you heard the president speak to in his address just last Thursday.
What? Like, seriously, what? What is that response to? The question was about anti-Semitism, and you said there are no credible threats. First off, there are credible threats happening on college campuses every single day. There's violence happening at these rallies. There are problems here. And why did we transition to a conversation about Muslim Americans, and what are we talking about when it comes to attacks on them? Recently? Is that what we're talking about? This is nonsensical gibberish, but there's a concerted effort here by the White House to do this. Why?
And so one of the things that the president has done is directed his team, Homeland Security team, to prioritize prevention and disruption of any emerging threats that could harm the Jewish, the Muslim, Arab Americans, or any other communities. And that is something that the president has sought to do and since day one. As you know, the president ran on bringing protecting communities, obviously, but bringing people together, protecting the soul of the nation. And so that is something that the president takes very, very seriously. We're going to continue to denounce any sort of hate towards any American here. And so that's what we're going to continue to be steadfast on. Again, he has directed his Homeland Security team to make sure that they're on top of this.
It wasn't even remotely an answer. It made absolutely no sense. The question was, what are you going to do about all the anti-Semitism we're seeing? And half your answer was about how Muslims are disproportionately attacked, like the anti-Semitism isn't a big deal because there's no credible threats. A very strange response here. Almost as strange as this tweet from Joe Biden. It says there is no place in America for hate. Which, okay, that's a nice slogan, which is a virtue signal. You're doing your thing. I get it. But is there some massive wave of Islamophobia that I don't see? Because I've seen hatred towards Palestinian Americans. There was a guy murdered, a 6-year-old in his building because he was a hateful person over this exact thing. We all saw that. It got plenty of play. It wasn't ignored. Are there other instances that we don't know about? Because I turn on television every day and see people talking about putting Jews in the ocean. from the river to the sea. Palestine should be free. No two states, just 1948. We're seeing it on college campuses all the time. And again, they're only out there protesting because there was a terror attack on Jews. And their response to that was to target Jews. That's anti-Semitism. It's plain and simple. Whatever this is, where he talks about how it's unequivocal that America is not a place for hate, that's fine, but that wasn't what the question was. But it's not just Joe Biden, and it's not just Karine-Jean Pierre. Barack Obama as well. He put a message out on Medium, I don't know what that is, but he wrote this. He talks about this being an extraordinary situation, and he uses this line, the middle paragraph here. That means actively opposing anti-Semitism in all its form everywhere. It means rejecting efforts to minimize the terrible tragedy that the Israeli people have just endured, as well as morally bankrupt suggestions that it may any cause can somehow justify the deliberate slaughter of innocents. Well, that's what these rallies actually are. They are justifications for the slaughter of innocents. That's why they call them colonizers instead of victims. Do you see what that is? That's what they're doing here. So that's happening. And then he says this. It means rejecting anti-Muslim, anti-Arab, anti-Palestinian sentiment. It means refusing to lump all Palestinians with Hamas or any other terrorist group. No one's doing any of that. I don't hear that. I don't see that. If it's out there, please share it. And let's denounce it together. But could you imagine someone saying, hey, what do you think about all the hate being directed towards Palestinians? Like, if that was a thing that was happening. And someone said, well, the Jews actually have it worse. How would that be reacted to? And I'll go a step further. You may have heard the case of the woman in Michigan, the synagogue president who was murdered. I have just a sinking suspicion that had it taken place 3 weeks ago, the conversation would be very different about that murder. The suggestion would be that it is a right-wing extremist that did it, and we would hear from the ADL and other groups saying that it was a right-wing extremist that did this, and we need to root that out of our nation. But none of that's taking place now, and I wonder why. No condemnation about what it might have been. They're just telling us, no, not a hate crime, not a hate crime. Well, what is it? Well, not a hate crime. It's very interesting. I have a feeling that would be a very different story in a different time. But maybe I'm wrong. There seems to be, like I said, a very peculiar move in this country and in this administration to downplay anti-Semitism, which is weird because we see it everywhere. Now, if you want to talk about downplaying, or you want to talk about anti-Muslim, anti-Arab, anti-Palestinian sentiment, I'm fine to talk about that. Show it to us, and let's have that conversation. I do not see rallies talking about pushing Arab people into the sea. But if you see any of that, please tell me about it, because I would love to see it. I just don't think it exists in any large form. We clearly have an anti-Semitism problem. It's on every television. It's on every college campus. We are seeing it. It is clear as day, and we're pretending that maybe the real problem here is Islamophobia, and that I just don't see on display everywhere in this country right now.